video for Beans Not B&B YouTube channel. It's been a long time in the making, but here we go. I wanted to start by making one of my first favorite recipes and one of my most popular to date, and they are called the homemade guilt-free oat waffles. Very few simple ingredients. We'll need 2 bananas, 2 ripe bananas. These aren't quite as ripe as I'd like them, but they'll do. 2.5 cups of oats. I always use gluten-free oats that I like to find at Trader Joe. They seem to have the best price around. 1/4 cup of almond milk, a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon cardamom, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, and then I like to add some flaxseed as well. That's certainly optional. 1 to 2 tablespoons should be fine. So you'll want to have a mixing bowl and just grab the peels off the bananas, and you can use a fork to mash them. I like to use an old-fashioned potato masher. Gets the job done well, and even my little 3-year-old daughter can get in there and mash with me. Makes it kind of a fun activity to get some of your aggressions out if needed. Maybe if you didn't have time to meditate or something, this is one way to get your, energy out. That's just fine. So it doesn't have to be liquid or anything. We're just kind of getting it to be pretty smooth, soft, sort of like pudding consistency. All right, I'm done with that. And we'll throw in 1/4 cup of any kind of plant-based milk is fine. And I'll stir that up a little bit. Throw in your oats. I like to reserve a little bit. Of course, when we're using bananas, there's some inherent variety in the size of them. So I like to kind of save some of the oats so that I can add more if I need to. If the bananas are really big, I might need extra oats. If they're really small, I need less. Not a exact science. You'll get to know the texture that works best once you've done it a couple times. All right, so we throw in some spices. Okay. So again, we're doing a teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon cardamom, gives a really nice flavor, and we'll do 1/2 teaspoon vanilla. Give that a stir. There's another variety for this recipe too. You could change it up a few different ways, but like for example, using some applesauce instead of some of the banana. You can also, I've also subbed in some Japanese sweet potato instead of banana if you're watching your fruit or if they're too sweet. Sometimes this is too sweet for people as they are. You can add in some orange or some Japanese sweet potato. It's a nice variety. You can also stir in some pumpkin. I have a separate recipe that has different spices too, but adding in some canned pumpkin makes for a nice fall twist on this recipe. So this is what we have. It's a little bit like a cookie dough consistency. It's wet, of course, but a little bit, crumbly too. It's not going to stick together in a ball. You'll just have to play with it. Now, everybody's waffle irons are a little different too. Forgot to point out, we need to preheat our waffle iron. Mine was already going a little bit, but we'll let that get going. I'm going to add a little bit more oats to this too. Let's see how that goes. So I have a Tefal waffle iron. There's nothing super magic about it. I love it, and it gets tons of use, and I think I paid $25 for it, maybe 30 on Amazon. But the most important thing, if you don't already have a waffle iron, to be cooking without oil as I do, it's important to have a non-stick waffle iron, otherwise you'll end up with an awful mess. So get one with non-stick plates, and a lot of them have removable plates. They don't all. So I have a little compost bin under here. So yeah, look for one that has, these are just called Removable Easy Clean. I'm not sure if they even still make that same exact model. It's a few years old, but that is, the removable part is definitely a feature to keep an eye out for. It just makes the cleanup a lot easier. I'm going to throw in some flaxseed. Like I said, a couple tablespoons is good. Flaxseed is obviously a really good source of fatty acids that you've probably heard about, but you do want to make sure that it's ground, because that's the only way your body can digest it. And it's a good idea to store it in the freezer to keep it fresh. It's one that doesn't keep very well at room temperature. And I'm going to go grab a couple more things too. Sometimes I like to add some pumpkin seeds just to give it a little bit of a change in the texture. Just a couple tablespoons should do the trick. All right, and so there's our final product there. My light comes on. It means it's okay to use the iron. I'm gonna turn it up, burning myself here. So this was one of our first changes when we went vegan, was changing up breakfast, because while we did go overnight from eating a standard American diet to being whole foods, plant-based, oil-free vegans, not everybody does that in one fell swoop. So go at your own pace. A lot of times people just don't really know where to start, and we like to just say to start with breakfast. So if you're just getting started on this journey, you don't know, which way to go, just pick one meal a day, and maybe just make sure all your breakfasts are whole foods, plant-based. Oatmeal, cold oatmeal, even cooked oatmeal is a very common, easy thing for people to do. And that's actually exactly where we started. And so that's where this recipe came from. We kind of were missing some of the familiar breakfast meals that we had grown accustomed to. And I created this recipe one day in order to have an option that was really tasty. And when somewhere along our journey we stopped eating sugar, and that was, for me, it was when I started working with Chef AJ and John Pierre's Ultimate Weight Loss Program in 2015, and early 2015. And so I ate these waffles with, of course I wasn't using any maple syrup anymore, and so I just started using fresh fruit on top. And at the time I was doing a little bit of balsamic vinegar too. There's a maple balsamic vinegar, that's a neat option. And now I either eat them plain or with a little bit of fresh fruit, and it is plenty sweet, as just a tasty way to have a decent breakfast. So a lot of times I just do vegetables and starches for breakfast now, but on the weekends I will, or if we have company or if there's some special occasion, these often come up. So I'm going to set this aside. So my waffle iron has two square sections. They make, and this is just what's considered a regular waffle iron. They also have the Belgian waffle iron that's a much thicker well. So this recipe is created for mine, which will make 4 square waffles. If you have a Belgian iron or one with like a giant round, then you'll have to probably at least double the recipe in order to make enough to serve everybody. But that gives you some idea of what you're expecting. So here we are getting ready for the topping part of the waffles. We had a little technical difficulty with the camera last night. The battery died. So I am doing part 2 today. And I'm going to show you how to prepare mango, which is a cool tip by itself. So 2 options. One is to use a mango slicer. Mangoes have a really big pit in the middle, and so this is a really good tool to remove that pit easily. So you just stand the mango up vertically, get it started, use some pressure, push down, and it splits it, holding the pit in the middle. And then the fleshy parts fall to the outside. And then just kind of push it through. I'm going to do a couple. Oh, I'm going to show you the other way. If you don't have a mango slicer, just hold it in your hand, and we're going to just mimic shaving out that center pit. So we're just going to do it one side at a time. Slide right down with the knife, flip it over, slide right down with the knife. Just as easy to do it that way, really. And don't throw this part away. I'll show you, there's a lot of good flesh still left on that. But for the waffles, this is the easiest part to use. And you just want to slice it right down the center without going through the skin. And then go across the other way. So you're making a checkerboard. And when you're done, have it all checkerboard, just pull down with your thumbs, push up with your fingers in the middle, pops out, and then you can just use your paring knife and slice off all the part that's popped out, and you have these perfect cubes. And I'll just do that with this other side too. So the waffle batter, I only cooked half of it last night, and then I had the other half in the fridge, and of course it dries it out a little bit. I don't do it this way too often, but I figured I would give it a try so I can at least show you on camera how it comes out. But I did want to warn you, all waffle irons are a little bit different, of course, and so I can't tell you an exact timing for when yours will be ready. But one thing I will always say, especially when you're first getting used to cooking without oil, when you're not using that non-stick spray, you want to be a little bit prepared that it might be a little bit sticky if it's not done enough. So in other words, if it hasn't cooked all the way through, the waffle may not hold together. And when you open it up, you might have a waffle on the top, waffle on the bottom, and sort of this batter still left in the middle. A lot of people have just given up at that point and consider it a flop. But don't give up. Just close it up instead and give it more time to cook, and then it just needs to cook all the way through, and then once it's cooked all the way through, it's much less likely to stick to the outside. Isn't that pretty? I think that is the coolest thing. I love that trick. Oh, and there's a couple different kinds of mangoes too. This kind is the smaller yellow kind, as you can see, and there's a kind that's a lot bigger, almost twice the size, and green or orange on the outside, or a little bit red too. It depends on the, I guess, I don't know what it depends on. If anybody knows, actually fill me in. But they come in a big variety, and it doesn't seem to indicate ripeness at all, at least in my experience. The way to tell if it's ripe is actually just to feel it. So a mango should be, actually if you're used to using avocado, it's very similar. They are very hard before they're ripe, and then they get a little bit soft, they have a little bit of give to them, and then when they get overripe, they get really soft and squishy. So mangoes are just the same way. You want it to be, you know, have a little bit of give when you squeeze it, but you don't want it to be mushy. And there's a big difference in flavor between a ripe mango and one that's not quite ripe. So sometimes if you cut it open too soon, it's a little bit disappointing, but that's okay. Give it a little bit more time and it can still ripen. So I'll just show you real quick with the flesh, or I'm sorry, with the pit, there is some flesh on it, so you can just use your knife to remove the skin from the edges, and then it's not nearly as pretty as doing it that way, but you can just slice off what's left, and you can just feel with your hands, you can feel through the knife. When it starts to get hard, then just stop. You're hitting the pit. It's sort of an odd pit because it just gets really, really dense. It's not even anything you can see all that clearly, like a lot of other fruit. You can just feel that you're beyond the flesh part, and then you don't want to eat it anymore. My daughter loves to just use these with her teeth. So she asks, whenever we're done cutting this, she asks to eat the big part of the mango, and that's this part. And you can just use your teeth to slide the little fleshy part off.
Have a mango?
You want it? Okay. There you go.
Can I have a different one?
Yeah, you can have either one, honey. Well, I'll leave it here for you. It's busted. Okay, so it's harder to see my light here, but when that comes on, we'll give it a whirl and see what we've got. We'll show you this finished product, 2 days in the making. I have a little compost bin there. Probably looks like I'm dropping it on the floor, but it's going in the compost. Okay, what do they say about a watched pot, right? Watched waffle iron is a little bit same way. So my light will turn green when, I don't know if you can pick it up on camera, but there's still some steam coming off of there, and then when the steam stops, light will turn green, and it'll tell us that it's ready. So other topping options, berries are my favorite. You could do sliced apples. If you don't have any fresh fruit on hand, one of the favorite ways, takes a little bit more time, but I've taken some frozen peaches, since I always have them in the freezer, take them out and put them in a saucepan with a little bit of water and cinnamon, and they'll just kind of heat right up and make almost, it gets a little bit caramelized actually if you heat them the right way, and that makes a really nice sort of hot, juicy, fruity topping. So that's a really nice way too, especially when if you're very new to this way of eating and you're used to having your waffles or pancakes drowning in maple syrup, which is the way I always used to enjoy them. It'll feel a lot different, and these are going to be, you'll see they're sort of hearty, and they almost look and feel and taste like a health waffle, because they are. So that's where the guilt-free part comes from, and that's why I love them now. But it takes a little bit of adjusting, I think, if you're used to, so much syrup, because you're not really liking the waffle part. You're loving the sugar part of the syrup. So using a cooked fruit topping might be a nice transition. I also used to use apple butter, made with just apples and apple cider for sweetening. So a little bit of sugar in there for sure, but not nearly as bad as maple syrup, and obviously it replaces the butter part too. So we're just skipping that altogether. Can't even tell. Trying to think what else. Applesauce is an easy thing. So any fruit in just about any form is going to taste good. So give it a try. I will say I have tried mixing fruit in. It does not seem to work so well, at least with this kind of waffle iron, because it's a shallow reservoir and not the big thick kind. The fruit, and like I've used blueberries, and the fruit ends up sticking all over the waffle plates. So maybe there's a better way to do that. With a traditional batter, I think it coats a little bit better and probably would work fine, but with this kind of oat mixture, it doesn't coat the berries so much, and so blueberries get stuck to the pan, and then it just tastes fine, but you're scraping it off when it's done, which isn't as fun. So actually, maybe I'll give you a little sneak peek. Oh, no, it won't even show me. So again, they're a little bit different because the batter was refrigerated overnight, but the light didn't go off yet, but I can tell that they're done. So the batter's a little bit drier than it would be. And a little secret, so it's a little bit hard to see perhaps, but the bottom tray always gets filled when you put the batter in. I'm gonna unplug so they stop cooking here. And then when you press the top down, it makes the waffle imprint, but it doesn't exactly puff up like a normal waffle would. So they end up looking a little bit flat on top. So when I serve them, I just flip them over. So they have the nice deep tray that was on the bottom gets on the top, and now they look like regular waffles. And it gives you a nice surface for decorating. If you have kids, they'll love decorating like this. My child is very particular, and she will decorate every one of her little squares just like that. When it's me, I get a little bit less fancy. I like the mishmash of colors. Get sprinkled around. There's no wrong way to do this. It's going to taste delicious no matter what you do. And there we have it. Finished product, homemade guilt-free waffles. Enjoy!